each and every one of us has this big ugly inside of us that we're desperately trying to hide because we don't want other people to know who we really are. And so we create that facade. I like to say your temperament plus your experiences plus your sin nature basically is what create our facade, right? And so, and really it's that sin nature which we're all born with, just our natural state to rebel against God and be prideful and really focus only on ourselves. And so we're doing everything we can to hide the big ugly. I like to call it the big ugly because as soon as I say it, everybody is triggered to think of that one thing that, oh man, if everyone knew that about me, it would just be the absolute worst.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Hello there. Welcome to another episode here on the Strong by Design podcast show. Hosting it today, Coach Chris Wilson, alongside our beloved new regular guest and host of the Strong by Design podcast. You got some upcoming episodes which are going to be fabulous. Mr. Jared Haley, thank you so much for being here. We've had some great past conversations on the show, and I encourage anybody just checking in or tuning in to go back just a few episodes to listen to a few past ones with Jared, Finding Peace in the Chaotic World, which is performing really well from a couple months ago now. And then we also did one, what was the other one that we did?
Baptism.
Yes. Do baptisms count?
Do baby baptisms.
Yeah. And that was more recent. That one actually performing quite well too. I mean, overall, as I've said multiple times in recent episodes, the show has really leveled up in 2022. We are getting more downloads on a monthly basis than ever before, which is fantastic and exciting for our team here and for other hosts of the show. And so that's a great thing that it's cool to get that kind of I don't say recognition, but feedback. Yeah. In terms of, are these conversations really reaching people, helping people?
Is it valuable?
Yeah, is it valuable? Are we putting something good into the world that's that people are taking and running with it and coming back? And they are. And that's great. And so it means that these conversations are hopefully really helping people to lead them to spark conversation in their own life, some reflection and stuff, because I think a lot of our conversations are very insightful. We're talking about real world, everyday struggles. We are dads and we are husbands, right? We are coworkers and friends. And so we talk about all those things, the things that make us strong by design. And again, if you're new to the show, Strong by Design has two meanings. We're created by our creator, strong by design, by a designer. We are not randomly just here. I can't believe that for a second. As amazing and beautiful as human beings are and unbelievably made, we are absolutely designed. And so we believe wholeheartedly that we are strong by our designer, but we are also called to live a life strong by design. And that's a choice, a conscious decision made every day by every single person listening to this is, what's today? What am I going to do today to live a life that's strong by design? I'm created strong by design, but I have to walk in that. Mm-hmm. I have to live that out, right? So, hey, before I forget, because sometimes I do, if you need to hit 5 stars, not if, when you're done listening to this, hit 5 stars, leave a rating or a review to let us know your thoughts and feelings about this show. And as I've done in some past episodes, I'm going to start reading more of these reviews. And I think people really enjoy hearing some of the comments that are coming in and how this is making an impact in people's lives. So please keep those coming. I really enjoy reading those, and I want to share those more with our listeners on a regular basis. So do that at the end of this, and maybe I'll remember to say it again at the end And thank you for coming back. If you're a past listener of the show, thanks for coming back and listening to more of what we have here on Strong by Design. It's only going to continue to get better this year, which is super exciting for me. So Jared and I were talking several weeks back, and it was your idea that prompted this episode. And you had just thrown out the words, the big ugly, right?
Yeah.
And we had this casual conversation about it. But you took it like 3 levels deeper, right? For me, I thought...
Once I get rolling,
I know. It's the pastor in you, right? Like, I thought, this will be a fun, superficial conversation, a little bit of reflection and, talking about the things that all of us carry with us that we don't like to share. And then you were like, but let's do this. Let's go here and let's go there. So it starts with the way we're all designed beautifully but differently. And one of the major things is our temperament.
Yes.
And share. So let's take people on this path now of where our conversation went.
Well, I looked up the official definition, because that's always helpful.
Right.
And so the official definition is it's a person or an animal's nature, especially as it permanently affects their behavior. So really, it's our temperament is the way that we respond or react to our environment, right? And the reality is that we all are wired differently. And so lots of science has gone into this and studies of different areas that people will respond to their environment differently. And they've broken it down into different categories. Yeah. And the 4 ones that people might be most familiar with, you have sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, and melancholy. Those are kind of the 4 that a lot of people will know. Your sanguine, they're your sociables, they're the ones that are kind of the life of the party, Choleric are known for strong leadership and decisiveness and kind of that type A personality. They want control of things. Phlegmatic, they're a little bit more shy. They're relaxed, kind of temperament. And then you have your melancholy. Those are they're a little bit more, they're known for their moodiness, they're known, but they're also very creative and kind of thoughtful. There's this group, actually, it's a couple in Florida that actually created a 5th temperament type, which is supine. They're the Arno couple. And so they created their own temperament, study and test and things like that called the Arno profiling system. Which is something that my wife and I have been highly involved in, and you can get trained in being able to give that assessment to other people. And so they came up with a 5th one, which is supine. And supine is, the best way to describe it is a masked sanguine, which is kind of an interesting thing. What I like about that particular temperament test is they break it down into 3 areas of your life. You have inclusion, you have affection, and you have control. And so these are 3 different areas of what makes you up as an entirety of a person. And you can be a different temperament or a different blend of temperaments in each of those areas. Yeah. And so it's a really deep, in-depth kind of look at who you are. It's not just temperament that makes up who we are, but it's also our family systems and the way that we grew up. And it kind of creates this... the person that we are and the reason that we act and respond the way that we do.
Well, and when I think of people, there's a lot of layers when you think about people, their personalities, and what makes up their character.
Yeah.
And after taking that personality test that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, we don't know each other's results of this other test just yet. And so we wanted to reveal it live on the podcast because it's pretty exciting. But I think a lot of us, in taking this, there's a lot of automatic reflection, right? Thinking about, geez, what is the answer to that? Like, you do get to know yourself a little bit better when you take these tests. And I think it's really important for people to do things like this on a regular basis to, at different stages of their life too, right? Because I would say every decade or so, we go through life changes that does kind of change our character to some extent. There's a lot of things that I've maintained all over the course of my life, my type of personality. But then there's also things that have kind of more come to the surface that were maybe there on some level, but more hidden or reserved, and have kind of come.
It's really developing a self-awareness.
Yeah,
and knowing who am I, how has God designed me to be and interact, and learning that one temperament is not better than the other. I think that's an important thing. A lot of times we try to adapt to something that's very unnatural to us because we think that's the right way to be. And so when we learn about who I am and why I act and respond the way that I do, I think natural is a really important word. In my natural state, this is how I would respond, not in an adaptive state. And then from there, we can learn what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses based on that temperament, and how can I be the best version. And really, that's where our relationship with Jesus comes in really important, because he helps balance us out, fill in those gaps, and make us our best version of ourselves.
Yeah, right. And what you find in a lot of relationships, whether that's a friendship or a marriage or a working relationship, is that a combination of different temperaments actually works really well, right? Where you're strong, I'm weak. Where I'm strong, you're weak. And these things can work together quite well. Because if we're all the same, it can be like an alpha dog situation. If we're all alphas, it can be a really hard relationship there to make happen. There are ways around it. There are ways to make that happen and work. But I think oftentimes what I find, when I'm high with something, a feeling, an emotion, my wife will be low, and vice versa.
Yep.
And we help balance each other out. And I think that's something to kind of know a little bit more about your different relationships and I think it's just fun. I mean, it's fun to know more about yourself.
It is fun to learn and discover, who you are and your tendencies. It's fun to learn that about your spouse or your friends or your coworkers. I mean, with all of it, it's good.
Yeah.
And, this stuff actually played a huge role in my marriage. For Christine and I, as we learn about ourselves and learn about each other, we learned the steps that we needed to take in order to help fulfill our spouse. Yeah. And that's it's a big deal. So the best example, I'm supine in two areas, and supines are just naturally submissive, and it's not like when I think about submitting to somebody else, really it's just easier. It's like I don't care enough to cause conflict. I'd rather, whatever you want to do, I don't care, let's just do it. The long-term result of that is usually a lot of anger and bitterness, and you don't even realize what it's doing to you inside. But the choleric person wants to be in control, and so Cristiano is choleric and I'm supine, and so for early on in our marriage, I would just submit to whatever emotion she was having because I would, it was easier to me that way. And what we learned through, going through some counseling and going through this temperament learning is she actually desired for me to give her boundaries, and so for me to rise above that temperament and really allow God to bring that balance within me so that I could provide what she needed in order for her to be healthy. And she knew that I needed to be, men typically are looking for that respect factor, which it's not this submissive of, yes, master, I will do whatever you want, but she wanted me to lead, and then she has to learn how to submit to that leadership. You can't be like, hey, make a decision and lead me. And then as soon as you make that decision and say, this is the direction you're going, you can't buck it, you have to say, okay, you made that choice. That's what I asked you to do. I'm going to follow you in that decision. And so she's had to learn how to submit, and I've had to learn how to lead. And it completely transformed the way that we operate in our marriage in a really good, healthy way. Yeah. I mean, that can be interpreted as, I became domineering and she became, and it's definitely not that at all. Yeah. If you've met Cristiano, you know that would never fly. So
yeah, no, that's, I know exactly what you mean there. And it's also picking the moments where that's the case, right?
Absolutely.
There's certain things where it's like, it really is like a minor thing. So it's not like in this, my wife doesn't need my leadership here in this thing. If it's something that's pretty easy with the kids or a schedule or something like that, it's like, let her own that, know, and I'll just kind of roll with that. Yep. And I very much do that in my marriage with my wife, and let her kind of, come up with things like the big summer schedule, like what we were talking about earlier. Let them figure out like what's going to work best in our home for this 3-month gap when there's no school. And that can be stressful.
Yep.
You have 4 children. There's a lot to responsible there. But if somebody owns that, like your wife, she has the time to invest in that and stuff while you're plugging away. She can kind of make that, and then you're like, yeah, that sounds great, honey. Let's just roll with that.
Yep. And at the same time, again, Supines will avoid confrontation typically, and so for the example you just brought up today so our son is in a soccer camp, and they emailed us the wrong address, and so my wife shows up to the wrong park, and she's kind of having some anxiety about where are we supposed to go, what are we supposed to do, and really frustrated. And when I was able to step in and get a hold of them and kind of express a healthy frustration of, hey, you didn't communicate to us right, stepping into that confrontation on her behalf made her feel loved, it made her feel protected, and it made her feel like I cared enough that I valued how she was feeling. Where early on in our marriage, I probably wouldn't have done any of that because I'd be like, it's okay that, I would make excuses for them. They're probably busy, they made a mistake, whatever, and it would make her feel like I didn't care.
That's right.
And so this temperament stuff it's good to know who you are, and it's good to know, okay, how do I balance those weaknesses and do what I need to do when I need to do it?
Yeah.
So it's good. It's really fun. I love temperament stuff.
I'm going to have my wife, I think, do this same test that we both took.
Yeah. So the test that we did for today's episode is the also popular Enneagram.
Yes.
And so you'll find all kinds of people out there that are like diehard Enneagram fans, right?
Well, we mentioned it in our meeting, right?
This morning.
We did a meeting with our whole team this morning, and just the word Enneagram instantly got reaction from two of the ladies.
Yep. They're like,
they were like, what'd you get?
What number are you?
Yeah.
And they're so excited to tell you what number they are.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of temperament tests because of my master's program and my undergrad and everything that I've done. Yeah. The best one I'm happy to say that the Arnold profile is by far the most comprehensive and most accurate one that I've ever done personally. Let's talk about the Enneagram. First of all, as you looked at your results, did you feel like it was good? Was it accurate? How did you feel about the test afterwards? And you were kind of alluding a little bit earlier. I shut you down because I wanted to hear it live on the podcast. But talk to me about your experience of even taking the questions.
Yes. Okay. So it's 144 questions, which sounds, wow, it's a lot of questions. But there is 2 answers to every question, and it's one or the other.
Yes.
Some are really easy to answer. As soon as your eyes hit the answer, you're like, that's me.
Yeah, it's giving you 2 options.
It's giving you 2 options, right? And then sometimes it's really thought-provoking, and it took me like 3 minutes to really just look inward and be like, what am I? I'm both.
Yeah, that's really hard.
I'm both of these. Which one am I more? 51% of the time,
Yep.
and so I was always trying to answer as honestly as I could. Not trying to dictate what the outcome would be. It's like,
I struggle too because I think that's what I want to be, and that's what I think I am,
right?
And that's what I adapt to be, even though that's how I feel, and kind of that internal wrestle as well is happening.
Or that's how I used to be.
Yes,
but this is how I am now.
Yep.
So I tried to always go towards now.
Yeah.
Because I'm different. I'm 46 years old. I'm different than I was in my 20s.
When you were 16?
And certainly then, right? Walking hormone at 16, So I definitely tried to be as thoughtful and honest as I possibly could. Because, listen, I'm not trying. I want to get the result that's as pure and as on point as possible, right? So 144 questions probably is going to take anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the person.
How long did it take you?
I think I was probably right around 45 minutes.
Really?
Or so.
Man, I whipped through that bad boy.
You were fast.
Yeah,
you said like a half an hour.
Like 15 minutes. 20
Yeah,
minutes
that's
maybe.
quick.
Yeah.
I was definitely more. I'm telling you, some questions
You
I was
really
like,
slowed down.
bink, bink, bink. And then
I
some.
wonder too, like, I don't know how they do the algorithm of this, but I wonder if part of your temperament is based on how long it actually takes you to take the test.
It could be.
Like, did you answer them quick? Like, I think that the sanguine in me is like, all right, move on to the next thing. What else we got?
That's
where someone who's more thought provoking and things like that, maybe they slow it down a little bit. You know, I don't know that. I have no idea. That's just me kind of.
I bet you
guessing.
I bet you that could play into it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There was a thought that I had. It'll probably resurface, but it kind of It came and it faded really quick. So it was just my a reaction to taking the test. But so should we start to share the results here
sure.
of this test?
Yep. Yeah, we can do that. Mine, I think I'm a tough cookie to crack or something like that because I have my top 3 are very close to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. One of our team members today, like as soon as we mentioned it, she said, "I'm a hard 1," I think is what she said. And I'm curious what her numbers are as far as what the separation is between her temperament and what everything else was.
Yes.
But mine is just such a blend. It kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. I had several of these packets that I'm trying to sift through, trying to say, and I think that I'm a little bit of everything. I don't think one number defines me exactly.
Right.
And I don't know. Here's the controversy. I've always struggled with the Enneagram a little bit because I never really felt like it did it. I've done several different ones, and I haven't found one that I go, that's me. You got me. You pegged me 100%.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm curious how it went with you. And like I said, maybe it's just because I'm a weirdo. But my number 1, we'll share our number 1s.
Okay.
Does that sound like a good way to proceed here?
Sounds really good. Yeah, do it.
Number 1.
We got lots of paperwork here.
Yes, we do. The Loyalist, type 6.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because I've done another one. I can't remember what it's called, but my top was the Labrador Retriever. It broke into 4 animals, is what this other test did, and so and that was one of the characteristics of the Labrador is they're always loyal as well. So I think there's an aspect of there that's definitely true that I'm a very loyal person and loyal to. It takes a lot to deter me to not be loyal anymore.
Wow.
And that's true. I mean, people can, probably to my detriment.
Yeah.
Like a Labrador, right? Like you could be an abusive owner, and that thing will probably still love you.
Yep.
That doesn't mean it's right. And so I think when we think of a loyal person, you think, oh, that's a great attribute to have, which it is. But it can also present itself as a weakness if you're not careful with
just
it.
about anything gone to extreme can be a detriment. Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. So that's your true number 1. But you said you're pretty darn close with your others. So should we give people what is it, 9 types?
There's 9 types. Sure. Yeah. You want to just go through the 9 types real quick?
Yeah.
Well, actually, let me hear yours first, and then we'll give them the 9.
What my number 1 is?
What's your number 1? Yeah.
Okay, my number 1.
I knew it. Just kidding. I didn't know. Go ahead.
Is type 2.
Okay.
The helper.
Yes, I can definitely see that in you.
But my number 2 was right there, only 1 point difference. The challenger.
Okay.
So kind of almost sounds conflicted, doesn't it?
Right.
Which is how I felt taking the whole frickin' thing. 144 questions, and probably half of them, I was conflicted in how to answer it. Mm-hmm. This is my thought from earlier, by the way. That remember I said I had something in my mind?
This is the right moment for it.
I'm wondering if this plays into it. I'm ambidextrous.
Oh. Okay.
And I'm wondering if I'm like left and right brain. Mm-hmm. I'm a mix. And I think it exactly plays into it because I do things lefty, I do things righty, it's a big flip flop.
Yeah.
And people they'll find out like, oh, you write righty, but you throw lefty, but you do this righty, but you still do that lefty.
We were playing catch the other day in the gym. We were throwing a football, and all of a sudden you're throwing with your left hand, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. I think it's very much part of this process.
Interesting.
Is that I am conflicted sometimes in how I handle things in my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't.
My number 2 is only 1 point off as well.
Interesting.
And it was type 2 as well, the helper.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So you're the loyalist and the helper, and they're 1 point difference.
Yep.
And I'm the helper and the challenger.
What was your score on your top 1?
26.
Okay. Mine was 25.
Okay, so we're very close there. So I had a 26 and a 25 for my top two. And then my third one was not too far off, type 7, the enthusiast.
Okay.
And what was your third?
My third was the peacemaker.
The peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So for me, the loyalist and peacemaker are two things in my bottom four. They didn't even make my top five, those two things.
The challenger is my absolute bottom.
Bottom. I knew it.
Absolute bottom.
Yep. You don't like confrontation.
I don't.
Nope.
No, which is, well, but I'm learning, I'm getting a lot better at it and saying what I need to say when I need to say it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely still, it's not like, there are people who, they don't care. They'll jump into a challenge no matter what. But
yeah.
I always say, like, if someone wanted to sell me on something, they could probably do it almost every time. Because I think whatever you say, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I agree with what you're saying.
And you know what? That's where I'm conflicted because I'm also gullible.
Yes.
If that goes back to high school.
Mm-hmm.
I had two superlatives in high school. You know, everybody wants to be the most athletic, the most likely to succeed, all these great things, right?
Yep.
In high school. Guess what two I got? Well, one really makes sense because I'm a host of a podcast show. I was most talkative in my high school, right?
Yeah.
I was also most gullible. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of crap to say, and I believed a lot of what I heard.
That's so funny.
But, I mean, it's just so funny. But that just shows you, I mean, I haven't changed a heck of a lot in, 30 years?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I have changed at the same time. So
I'm going to quickly list all 9 types just so
everyone knows
what they are. Yep.
Do it.
So type 1 is the reformer. Type 2 is the helper. 3 is the achiever. 4 is the individualist. 5 is the investigator. 6 is the loyalist. 7 is the enthusiast. 8 is the challenger. And 9 is the peacemaker. And I don't think that the numbers it's not like any particular order. But if you want to learn more about these, there's books written on the Enneagram.
Yeah.
You can go just Google Enneagram and you'll find all kinds of, once you take the test, and maybe we can post the link to the particular test that we did.
Yeah, we'll have to do that.
It was $12 a test, but you get all of this paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a really good detailed printout for each.
It's very robust.
Yeah, each type you have several pages of reading to learn a little bit more about why that number is your personality type.
There's free ones out there that I've done that they don't even, at the end of it, they don't tell you what you are.
Yeah, if it's free, is it really going to be great for you? Come on.
It was annoying.
Invest $12 and
I didn't challenge them on it though. I probably should have.
You don't like that confrontation, so you're not going to challenge them. So what more can we
can I just hear?
Talk about here?
I want to hear. So you're number 1. We'll just stick with number 1s.
Yeah.
You're number 1. Remind me, you're the helper number 1.
Yes.
It gives your generals. Let me just hear your general number 2s are.
Yes.
It's on that first page.
Yep, I got it.
Give it to me.
So generally, I am caring, empathetic, warm, thoughtful, appreciative, generous, other-oriented, tactile, affectionate, well-intentioned, and demonstrative or demonstrative, as some people would probably say, but I say demonstrative.
I feel like when you say demonstrative, it means you're like bearing down on people.
Right.
I don't know.
I think that's more of a coaching or a learned
demonstrative.
Demonstrative. Yeah.
You'd be a good YouTube guy.
Yeah. I would be. I'd make a good YouTube how-to video on YouTube. Yeah, I've done a few of those in my life. Now, it says below that, 2s get into conflicts by being people-pleasing, flattering, ingratiating, clingy, worried, possessive, insincere, seductive, self-important, and self-deceptive. And then it says at their best, 2s are encouraging, loving, self-nurturing, constant, joyous, humble, forgiving, gracious, and compassionate.
Do you feel like that is good descriptions of you? Or no?
I feel like 98% of what is said there is spot on.
I kind of wish that they didn't have so many words.
I know, it's almost too many.
They make it so big.
All encompassing.
It's like what is it that you read? Your horoscope.
Which
is like, it's like all encompassing.
It's too much of the spectrum.
Like let's narrow it, because that's the same like with the sixes. So we're reliable, hardworking, organized, which is not true of me typically. Vigilant, my bad. Vigilant, dutiful, definitely dutiful, evaluating, cautious, anxious. There's some, I'm like 50-50 on that.
Yeah.
And then we get into conflict by being pessimistic, defensive, evasive, negative, worrying, reactive, suspicious. We blame. But we're at our best. We're courageous, cooperative, disciplined, grounded, secure, faithful, funny, affectionate. 60-40, 50-50 is kind of where I feel like I match with some of these, which is, again, I think that's what bugs me the most about the Enneagram, at least with this particular test, is how widely spread they're casting the net, as opposed to really honing in on each particular thing. And maybe that's not the Enneagram, but maybe that's the test's fault. But that's kind of where maybe people can put comments on here, write in and tell me why I'm wrong. I'm
well,
happy. I do great with conflict when I don't have to, embrace it with you in the same room.
The only way to make these tests that much more precise or spot on, right, would be to have more questions, right? Mm-hmm. And still probably with the same, like, you got two choices for your answers, but just go further with how many questions. Right. The more detail, the more responses, the more dialed in you can get, right? Sure. So it's like, if this was 244 questions, okay, well, now you're probably going to know even more what I am.
And again, going back to the Arnold profiling system, since they break it down into different categories, because, inclusion, so we'll just take that example. So they say, if you enter into a room full of people, how important is it for you to be included in the group? Or how much do you resist and want to stay away from the group, right? And that is a different kind of temperament than affection. So affection is more like with someone that you love, how much affection do you want to give and how much affection do you want to receive? And then control is, again, how much do I want to control others and how much do I want others to control me? And so breaking it down, it's like, it's hard to have the blanket, because for me, I act differently at home, in my safe place with my family, than I'm going to act if I come into the office for the first time. Or I act differently if I've been given authority. So if I'm a pastor and I've been given authority at a space, I will take initiative. I will take leadership. Because I know that I have that authority. But if we're in a group and like a group exercise, and they give us something to do, the authority hasn't been given to me yet, and so I'm not going to naturally go and just take it because I want it. I'm actually going to say, who else wants it, and then I'm going to be loyal to that. So it's hard to just say you're hard-nosed on something like that, because it's very situational. And every we're more complicated than that as human beings, and so. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because I know Mike and I are very much the same way. We've talked about this before. When we're presented with a situation, maybe in a group type atmosphere, if there's somebody that steps up and leads well, we're perfectly fine with following that leadership. 100%. I love it. I love following a good leader. But if someone steps up or does a semi-okay, like doesn't do a great job, I will want that position. I will want to take that over, because I'm like, this is not serving our group.
That's when the challenger rises to the surface.
100%. I have no qualms with following a really good leader. But if there's not good leadership present, I will want to take that over. Well, there's other people that would be like, I'm just totally a follower. I'll follow a bad one or a good one. It's kind of whatever's there.
You could be a bad as long as you convince me that what you're doing is right. I'll probably follow you. Which is, again, that's my natural tendency. And so I've worked really hard at building this other building up on that weakness,
Yeah.
so that hopefully I'm not doing that near as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And I think that my wife would vouch for me that I've gotten a lot better, even in my own family dynamics. Where I've created healthy boundaries with not just Christiana and I and the kids, but even with our extended family and things like that, where we're creating healthy boundaries and things along those lines, where in the past that just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So we have to develop those skills. As you learn about yourself, you learn what your weaknesses and strengths are so that you can develop and get better. It's not so you can use it as an excuse. I think that can be a problem with the temperament stuff, is you can say, oh, well, this is how I was made and there's nothing I can do about it, and so you just have to deal with me.
That plug plays right into us being strong by design, right? And when we find areas of weakness in our life, we should be in search of improvement.
Yeah.
How can I get better here?
Absolutely.
How can I level up here? If I'm getting A's and B's here, but I'm getting C's, D's, or F's over here, what can I do to level up, right?
Yeah.
And we learn that from a very young age, that we should be, encouraged to grow where we're weak, to focus where we're weak.
Yeah.
And I think we should never lose that. Even as we get older, we shouldn't just lock in and be hard-headed and be like, that's just the way I'm made.
Yep.
I don't believe that. I don't buy that. I buy it as far as like what you're naturally skilled and talented in. That's the way you were made. Mm-hmm. But I feel like where we're deficient or coming up short is we should feel some kind of pull to grow there, to grow that area.
Yep. And this is a scary thing, right? I mean, it's scary to discover who you really are. I think that can be a little bit terrifying because a lot of times we don't like who we are. I remember driving home, especially with the confrontation. So when we were in Iowa, our kids were on like Title 19.
And that's where you used to live before you moved to the great state of Florida.
No, this is where...
prior to Colorado.
Yes, so we grew up in Colorado, and then I pastored in Iowa for 5 years, and then we moved back to Colorado, and then we moved here.
Where in the world is Jared Haley?
That's right. You never know. You never know where I'm going to be. But when we were in Iowa, I wasn't making a lot of money, working at a small rural church, and so our kids were on government, medical assistance and things like that, and so it makes it really limited on where they can go to the dentist. And so we ended up going to this dentist, and the night before our kid's appointment, our kid got the flu and was like puking all over the place. And so we called like right away in the morning, and we said, hey, our son's been up all night. He's throwing up. You don't want him in there. And the lady said, either you bring him in or you can't come back here ever again. Yeah. That was our response as well.
That's bizarre.
And so we're like, well, we're not going to bring him in. He's puking. And so basically he got cut off. So I still had a dentist appointment. So I go into my dentist appointment a few weeks later.
Same place?
Same place. Because I wanted to talk to the guy. I'm like, I'm going to express, he was very nice to me the whole time. We did the appointment. And at the end, I'm like, hey, I need to ask you something. And I told him, hey, this is what happened. My kid was throwing up. It didn't seem like the right idea to bring him in and expose everybody else to that.
Right.
And the dude flipped, on a dime, and all of a sudden started yelling at me and saying how he doesn't even know why he does this stuff, and when kids don't show up that he loses money and he's already taken a discount anyway, and all of this stuff.
Oh my goodness.
And basically I froze. I didn't know how to respond to this guy, and I was like, whatever, I'm out. We won't ever come back. Fine. If you hate it that much, we won't come back.
Hey, so long, buddy.
And as I'm driving home, my brain starts to function again, and I start thinking, that's fine. Number one, I wanted to ask him, if you hate it so much, why do you do it? Like, no one's making you do state stuff, if it's out of the goodness of your heart, then do it out of the goodness of your heart and don't freak out. Number two, maybe you have a policy that says, hey, if you're going to miss an appointment, you can't come back unless you pay for that appointment or something like that. Like have a different option, in order, I'm like, I'm happy to give you the money. I get that you lost out on money because you couldn't fill that gap. let me pay it, and then we'll schedule him again. Like, I'm totally okay with that. But you didn't even give me that option.
Wow.
You just cut me off and yelled at me and basically kicked me out. And I remember driving home and just praying and saying, God, I hate who I am. Like, I hate that in those situations, my brain shuts off and I can't think. I can't process and say what I want to say. And it's like my logic goes out the window. It's fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Yep.
And I totally freeze and don't know how to handle the situation.
Right.
And so I still have that tendency to freeze in situations, but I'm really praying and saying, God, I need you to fill that gap, because I know this is my natural tendency, and I need you to help my brain continue to function in those situations.
Wow.
So that we can actually move forward in a healthy way, because there's nothing healthy about that interaction.
Well, morally, he's wrong.
Right.
In that interaction, I can't believe that there's a listener listening that wouldn't find him to be wrong.
Right.
Whether or not they understand where he's coming from, he didn't deliver it right.
Right.
And that's actually going to be a future episode.
Yeah.
It's not the message, it's the delivery.
Sure.
Yep. Right? It's
Yep.
like you can say something to somebody, but it's how it comes over, how it comes across. He could have been like, but you saw it happen in real time. You saw this guy change from being, seemingly fine to
irate.
Yeah. And all you did was reference a past thing that said, hey, in this situation, you're the guy. And then...
and I don't know his backstory. I always give the benefit. Again, this is my temperament. I give the benefit of the doubt. I give everybody grace. And I wasn't mad that he was mad. I was mad at myself that I couldn't articulate what I was thinking and feeling.
That's right.
In the moment.
Right.
And
to handle confrontation in a more, I don't know, manly or just a more
appropriate and healthy,
straightforward, or
a way that would cause something to change, because he's just going to go do that to the next person.
Right. Someone else, same guy as you, the loyalist, or whatever. Somebody who avoids confrontation is going to be the same result.
Let's say I was a challenger in that situation, and I just started yelling back at him.
That doesn't go well.
That's just going to escalate as well, and it's still going to. And I could have been driving home going, I hate myself. Every time I have confrontation, I just turn into an animal and start shouting out profanities, whatever it might be, which is also not helpful, So I don't think it necessarily matters what our temperament is. We need to figure out how to overcome that weakness, and I believe that it's through Jesus that he teaches us how to do those things, and to fill in those gaps in every situation.
He handled confrontation quite well in his day.
I mean, he flipped tables over, so I mean,
But he did. But the way he flipped it, he didn't hurt anybody in the flipping.
It was a
very graceful flip. Obviously, and it got everyone's attention. It's funny though, because you do remind me of myself, or a moment when I was in my 20s. I worked for a furniture company for several years in sales. Just a really great business, a really well-run business that I really enjoyed. The people I worked with and the work itself I loved. It's my mid-20s. And when customers would be irate or upset about their delivery of their product, of their furniture, like we didn't show up on time, stuff was damaged, whatever it was. And when there would be an in-person or over-the-phone confrontation or conflict, oftentimes I handled those poorly because I was handling them as if they were mad at me personally. Whereas they were really just more mad at what had happened. They were mad at the result of what their expectations were that didn't get satisfied. And I had a really tough time understanding that and handling that, managing my emotions better in those moments. And I wish I could go back and see it a little bit more from there, like put myself in their shoes a little bit better and be like, in this moment, I would be upset and pissed as well. And even if I kind of went over the top or was a little bit too emotional or maybe said a few things that I shouldn't have said, it wasn't so much the person, it was the problem. And if me as a sales associate, and I worked my way up into management and stuff in this job, but I would have been far better servicing them, being like, listen, I understand where you're coming from. I understand your pain and your frustration and your anger 100%. And I am with you on that. I too would be this upset. But let's look at what we can do to fix it and resolve it. You know, and that I felt that from the management team that I was surrounded by, and people that were more mature, just older than me and experienced. And I saw them handle those situations more like that. And I would always I'd have great admiration for them because I could be like, I wish I could be more like that.
Yeah. Well, we can give props to the soccer people today for Ezra's thing, because they called me. And the guy was very nice on the phone, and he was very apologetic. He's like, I totally get it. That's frustrating. It's hard going to the wrong field. We're sorry that happened to you. You know, we're going to get that fixed on our end.
And doesn't that immediately cut you down in half? Not that you were flipping out.
Yeah, no.
But when someone takes your side in a situation and says, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I hear you, what you're saying.
Yeah, let's get
Gosh,
this,
that would
let's
make me
fix it.
upset.
Let's fix it.
Let's fix it. Let's figure out a way. I mean, immediately your emotions come down 50%, I think, you can be angry and belligerent. And when someone else, when you're not coming back at them, because that's what they're expecting. They're expecting the confrontation. They almost want it. But when you're just killing them with kindness, the loyalist doesn't. When you kill someone with kindness, they just come back at you with kindness. It's really hard to stay angry at that person.
Yeah.
Very rarely, I think, can someone maintain that level of anger when you're coming back at them with graciousness and being like empathetic, you know, with
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah. And so what this kind of, I wanted to lead this in is,
of course.
So we have our temperament, which is kind of how God naturally creates us in the way that we're interacting with our environment, right? But then we also have our family systems and what we grew up in. And so what starts to happen even in our own families is we start to adapt our natural temperament in order to be sustained in a family system. And then we start creating this idealistic person of what we think a good human being is supposed to look like. And so by the time we're, out of high school and kind of getting into our 20s, we start creating this facade, this fake person of who we want people to perceive us to be. And so it's almost a fake version of ourselves. And we start creating this image because we want to hide who we truly are inside, because we're afraid that if people knew who we really were, that they would know that we're terrible and disgusting or ugly. And I like to call it that each and every one of us has this big ugly inside of us that we're desperately trying to hide because we don't want other people to know who we really are. And so we create that facade. I like to say your temperament plus your experiences plus your sin nature, basically, is what create our facade, right? And so, and really, it's that sin nature which we're all born with is this natural, our natural state to rebel against God and be prideful and really focus only on ourselves. And so, we're doing everything we can to hide the big ugly. I like to call it the big ugly because. As soon as I say it, everybody is triggered to think of that one thing that, oh man, if everyone knew that about me, it would just be the absolute worst.
We all have this wall up, don't we? A shield of some kind.
Absolutely.
And for some people, I think it's more evident or obvious than others.
Yep.
Some people like me, I wear my emotions right out there. Like everyone kind of knows where I'm at.
There's probably still something. There are things about you that you probably keep I think some of us are really good at making it seem like I share everything, because if I overshare with all of this stuff, then you won't ask me about this little area that I have over here, because I don't want you to know about that. I don't want you to know that I have these thoughts. I don't want you to know that I have these feelings, because I don't want to have those thoughts and feelings, but they just seem to sit there and fester.
Yeah. Wow. It's really, and this is where our conversation really had stemmed from. To prompt this conversation for today's episode is we started talking about this. Is like the masks that we wear. I'm willing to share or show people this side of me or this part of me, but let's not necessarily go here. this is maybe only reserved for a select few, or this is only the part of me that my wife knows,
right,
or my kids have seen that I'm not even proud of. But, I mean, let's face it, who knows us best, right? The people that we live with, the people that see us at our best and at our worst.
Yeah, and I think that the place that I see this the most of people putting on that face, that facade, is really at church and in Christian circles. It's like we're afraid to let people know that we actually suck as human beings, So we try to put on our best face, which I think that we do that. I mean, obviously, I think you do that in the workplace most of the time too, or else, you could get fired. And so there is a balance, right? There is an appropriate time and place to share about these things and to work through those things. And it shouldn't be something that you're just, going up and publicly saying, hey, this is my biggest struggle and this is why I'm a terrible human being. Like that's not going to be helpful either.
Right.
But I do think that we, in order to become full and to become whole and to become everything that God wants us to be, we have to find a safe place that we can share those thoughts and feelings, that we're not going to be judged and that we're not going to be rejected. A lot of times, I mean, there are things that, maybe you can't share it with your wife or your husband. Like, it's just not, it's not going to be healthy for the marriage to say, man, I'm struggling with this, but, maybe it's a friend that you can talk to, or maybe it's a counselor that you need to go, or maybe it's a pastor, but it's important to speak those things out. I'm pulling scripture out of the top of my head. I can't place it right now, but basically, Satan wants to keep those things in darkness. And it says, Paul is basically saying, bring those things into the light, right? Yeah. And so you need a safe space to bring those things into the light so that they can be dealt with properly, so that you can get rid of that facade, so that you can know who you are, so that you can live in your temperament, understanding its strengths and weaknesses, and allow Jesus to create you to be, or to form you to be, that whole person that he designed you to be. Yeah. And so that it's a very kind of rough thing to navigate on your own, and we need other people that are safe, that we can trust, to help us walk through that stuff, along with our relationship with Jesus.
100%. And listen, I know people don't want to necessarily air all their dirty laundry, right, to the world, and you don't have to, right? And that's not what we're saying you need to do. What we do know, what Jared and I agree on 100%, is that all of us have a sinful nature. All of us have things that we're ashamed of, or that we regret, right? Or wish went a different way, or, things buried in our past, maybe things more recent, maybe things just that we're still in the midst of dealing with today, Yeah. But I think what we need is healthy outlets and ways to discuss these things that maybe make us a little uncomfortable, but help us to grow in that area, or to make healthy change in that area, right? And that, like you said, it could be a pastor, it could be a mentor, it could be a close friend that you trust, that you just have really good, I say chemistry with, but just a really good level of trust with each other, knowing that you have each other's back and you're a good sounding board for each other. Sometimes we just need to be able to get things off our chest. Yep. We're not looking for all of our problems to be solved in a conversation. We're just looking for someone else to hear us and to maybe give us some kind of feedback on that moment.
Outside wisdom is always helpful. So for me, getting mad has always been a struggle. Not that I don't get mad, that once I reach that tipping point, like typically every time I get mad, it seems to cause more harm than good. It never ends up getting me where I want to go. And so actually, before we moved out here, I called up my counselor, who we used to see in Iowa. I said, hey, I need to have a session with you. I'm struggling with some things that I'm angry about. She's like, yeah, no problem. So we did a Zoom call. And that's, I said, how come every time I get mad, how come I'm not allowed to get mad or something like that, because it makes things worse? And she said something like, can I quote you on that, as like, the things that pines say all the time, based on my temperament. And so I'm still working through that. And that piece of me, I mean, it just came out this last week where I was frustrated with something, and I went upstairs, and the kids and Christiana were all having fun, and I just started screaming and yelling at them like, you're not going to have fun. I'm going to ruin it all because I'm mad that you guys aren't picking up after yourselves or whatever. And it ended up making Christiana like frustrated and mad that I ruined their moment together. And the kids were, kind of confused that Dad, who's usually nice and somewhat calm, just kind of came up, and it was just, I did the flip,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we're always working on it, and always, and I was we actually had a family meeting, and I said, okay, Dad messed up. I'm sorry. How could have I, help me see, how can I get mad and do it in a way that works? How could I have handled this better? And so we kind of had a conversation with that as a family, which it was helpful for me. It was helpful for them. I think it was helpful for Christiana as well. And for us to be able to go to those that we love and say, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. I'm not perfect either. I'm still trying to get better myself. And then really, I always come back to, we just got to bring Jesus into the mix and say, God, I need your help to actually get better at this thing that I'm struggling with.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, for me, anger and impatience, just having a short fuse. I can walk in a room and most people are like, oh, Chris, he's always got a smile on his face. He's always chatting it up with everybody, trying to make people feel comfortable and, all these things. And that is me. Mm-hmm. That is me at my root. I'm a people person. I love being in social environments and events. And I thrive on that. I love that energy, and I love performing, and I love, being the center of attention or the spotlight. Yep. Like I always have ever since I was a little kid. And I have great memories of that. But I also can kind of just lose it over the simplest of things sometimes, because I have this temperament that just seems erratic, or, and my dad was very much that way. And so I have tough times sometimes, like getting through that or overcoming that. Yeah. And obviously my wife, we've been together for 20 years, so she's seen the worst of me. Mm-hmm. But she's also, my wife's more reserved and more quiet and shy, and, doesn't like public speaking and doesn't like that stuff. So who is she drawn to? the opposite, right? The guy that is all those things. Mm-hmm. So that's why we kind of make this, really a great couple, is because we kind of, we're balanced. She's a better listener, than I am, but she's also is a leader in her own right, which is great. But I'm unafraid to admit to my shortcomings. I think the key, and you already hit on it, is something that a lot of people are unwilling to do, is to to be apologetic and to be publicly sorry, especially to spouses and children, mm-hmm. or to people that are the most meaningful to us, and letting them know that that's an area where I'm struggling or I'm weak and I need your help and I need to get better here. Mm-hmm. And I think so many men, at least, in our day growing up in the 70s and 80s, like you didn't admit to that stuff when you were a man. You just were you ruled with an iron fist, and it was the way it was, and you didn't apologize for your behavior, good or bad, and life just went on. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a strength of men today to be able to acknowledge that at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage, and it's not. I think a lot of guys, they feel like, oh, I'm weak. Mm-hmm. If I admit to failure or wrongdoing to my wife or kids, if I apologize, well, geez, I'm just a big PUSSY, right?
Sure.
But are you? Uh-huh. What do you say to that?
No. I wouldn't say that. I think that there is strength in being able to recognize where you have failed, and then there's something to. I think if you leave it at that, then yeah, if you become like this overly apologetic and
right,
you have to take the next step. I think that's where the manliness comes in and says, "Here's where I messed up. here's what I'm going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
There has to be an element of I am changing, I'm taking steps. Otherwise, just admission, I feel like falls short of the redemption quality that God wants to bring. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's you have to not just recognize it and ask for forgiveness. You have to also take those steps to making that positive change.
Yeah. I think
they need to see that. Yeah.
It's a quote, grace is not without effort. There are things that we need to be giving grace to each other. We need to be giving grace to ourselves, but there's also effort in, I can't just blame my temperament on something. I have to work towards getting better at my weaknesses and growing in those areas that I know I struggle in.
Yeah. And I know for you and I, what is a huge part of this is just getting into the Word, getting into the Bible. It's the best teaching there is in the world on how to be a better human being. And it's trying to be more Christ-like in our day-to-day, in how we treat other people, how we talk to ourselves, how to give ourselves grace. It's
developing that full life.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we think of God's Word and Scripture as this book of rules that says all the things I can't do, and it's just kind of a real wet blanket. But the reality is that when it's coupled with who God has made you to be, and when you see these good attributes that they're actually helping you be the whole person that God wanted you to be in the first place, and it should be something that is encouraging you and lifting you up and making you better, not something that's pushing you down and making life harder.
That's right. Yeah, when I read, I'm in the Bible just about daily. I try to always set aside time, whether it's in the morning or in the afternoon when I'm having lunch. There is a moment in my day where I can read Scripture and typically have like an Old Testament and a New Testament bookmark.
Yeah.
So I'm rotating through different parts of the Bible. And then I pair that with some other devotional reading. And I would encourage anybody listening or watching the show at this time to have something like that in their day that helps them reflect a little bit more and to look inward a little bit more. And we all have these things, these facades, these big uglies, these parts of us that we don't like, that we carry around with us, that we don't want other people to see. And the only thing that makes sense to me and to you to deal with that, right, is to read truth. To read this is the blueprint for living a better life, right? Is to read Scripture, the Word of God, and this is how to be a better person. Is to follow the steps that Jesus walked already, and that He's walking with us, each of us now, right? And it's the only thing that makes sense to me, right? There's a lot of people walking around feeling that an emptiness or a lack in control or ability to change things in their life, things that they are scary or frightening to think about or spend time with. How do I overcome this? What do I do? And it's not going to be dealt with just earthly stuff. With idols and material things. That's not filling. That's why people are walking around hopeless a lot of times, right? Because they're trying to fill these holes in their lives with stuff that doesn't do a good job. Temporarily, it might. For a day, a new car makes you feel right, or a new house, or that special trip. It helps you forget all your problems, but you come right back to life, and your problems are still there, aren't they?
Yeah.
The big ugly just waiting around the corner.
That's right. Yeah. So I think the one-on-one is important with you and God, and then working those things out in a healthy spiritual community.
Yeah.
I think that's the other piece that's very important and valuable.
Yeah, it really is. And whether that's a church or some type of other group, maybe a group that you're part of, that's you found through your church, but that meets separately
Small
from churches.
Groups, friends,
small group is
counselor,
great. Yeah,
all kinds of options.
We're so fortunate because we have that here in the workplace, which a lot of people don't have. We realize that this is like a luxury to have this where we work, and this is it's for the most part secular work. This is Critical Bench is not a church. We're a fitness and health publishing company that helps people live healthier, longer, just stronger lives. But we get to infuse that with our faith, which is fantastic and fun for us and life-giving for all of us. And we all have each other's back and supportive. A lot of people don't have that. They probably feel like they're rogue, like all by themselves in their workplace. So we're just so fortunate. But seek that out in your life, whether that's in a small group, at your church, with somebody that you can glean some hope and some wisdom from, because God knows we all need it. We all need areas in our life to grow in. Well, this has been so much fun. We're going to post a link in the description for this episode, of course, for this Enneagram. It's fun. It was fun to take it and to see it and to read through the results. And so I have all these printouts here. I'm going to keep in a file, and I encourage anyone listening to go and do that. Jared, thanks for coming up with all of this great concept. Really, I mean, this is all you, man.
It was fun.
It was
it's
totally
fun to talk about.
You put me to work is what you did. Like I said at the beginning, we had this little side convo, hey, this will be a fun episode. And then, all of a sudden I got hours invested in like personality tests.
You're welcome.
No, but it is good. It's better to be able to learn more about yourself. That's great. And
that's good.
I kind of like myself a little bit more after taking it, I guess. So, hey, now's a good time. And I did remember, hit that 5 stars, leave us a rating or a review, whatever platform you listen to the podcast. Those really help us a lot. And in a lot of future episodes, I will take a moment, beginning, middle, or end of the episode to read some of these great reviews that have been coming in for the show. We love, having these meaningful conversations, because we know there's people on the other side that are going to just live a life that's stronger by design. And we are just so blessed to have this platform. And we thank you. We hope you're encouraged, and we look forward to bringing you another episode next week, as always, here on Strong by Design. Have a great rest of your week. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.